Welcome, folks. Greetings and welcome to this Mohonk Consultations event, Finding Common Ground. My name is Brad Berg, and I'm a member of the Board of Directors of Mohonk Consultations. Mohonk Consultations is a nonprofit organization based at the Mohonk Mountain House in New Paltz, New York, and we were founded back in 1980. Our mission is essentially to convene, to bring together people of diverse perspectives to discuss practical means to promote the interrelationship and sustainability of all life on Earth. And we hope our meetings will galvanize and lead to action. As this is a 1-hour webinar rather than a Zoom meeting, we have turned off the feature for chat. Your audio will be in listen mode only, and your video is in view only mode. I do look forward to doing this in person with you folks next time. Our conferences and forums have often addressed environmental issues such as protecting water resources, sustainable energy, supporting family farms and farm workers, climate change, and land conservation, as well as topics on social justice, food insecurity, and Lyme disease. We also provide an annual award for distinguished achievement. Today's program continues the 125 years long living tradition of conferencing on peace building at the Mohonk Mountain House, and recently included our November 2019 two-day conference on creating and sustaining peace. We are very grateful to the Smiley family, owners of the Mountain House, for their ongoing support of our activities. Finding Common Ground was originally scheduled to be held live at the Mountain House last spring, but due to the pandemic, here we are together in a different way. You'll be able to view this program on our website, mohonk-consultations.org, in the near future, thanks to our excellent administrative coordinator, Nancy Graham, who is in the background helping to broadcast this webinar. Thanks, Nancy. Please note that our speakers' views do not necessarily represent those of Mohonk Consultations. So here we are in a world that today is even more tense and polarized than when we originally conceived this program a year and a half ago. And with the impeachment trial now happening in the US Senate, it is even more tense than it was a week ago when I started preparing this introduction for today's program. President Biden has said he will work to create unity. That sounds great, but maybe more immediate and attainable goals are just to defuse the hate, fear, and distrust that perpetuates the current polarization. This can lead us to a realization that it is okay to have differences of perspective, that we can agree to disagree without animosity, and that a willingness to compromise and cooperate can help us find common ground. The current crises in the world are presenting us with an opportunity to see what we do have in common. And even the coronavirus pandemic shows us that we really are all connected, even if in unexpected ways. And on the bright side, it has inspired so many of us to care for and help each other. This is just a welcome, not a presentation. So I'll be brief and just add one simple prescription to help us find common ground. Pondering on the title for this program, it occurred to me that the word finding in Finding Common Ground is an action word, and that we can find common ground when enough of us generate and spread goodwill throughout our communities and throughout the world. It has been said that goodwill is a dynamic energy which can bring about fundamental changes, and its mode of expression is through the activity of individuals and groups through our massed intent. So we're going to start in a second. We should have time for one question for each speaker, and these questions have been generated in advance. After speakers Dennis Kucinich, Lester Strong, and Dior Williams, we will see a music video by Pete Zigger and friends that very much addresses the theme for today. And I've heard it said that it was the last song that he wrote. Okay, our first speaker is Dennis Kucinich, a former progressive member of the House of Representatives for many years, and a two-time United States presidential candidate. He once recommended that the federal government establish a new cabinet-level position, the Department of Peace. We are really pleased to have him with us today, and rather than my spending time with a deservedly lengthy introduction, we will just turn it over to Dennis right now.
Good evening from Cleveland, Ohio, where my wife and I have happily spent the last year during the pandemic, which has been a tough time, but you really learn when you are in a relatively confined space with a few individuals over a long period of time, how you can become ever more deeply in love. And our home is blessed with that. And so I hope that all of you who are watching have had the same experience. Brad, it's a pleasure to join you and Lester and Dior on this discussion about finding common ground. I watched the events in Washington in the last couple of years, and I decidedly did not participate because I did not want to get into the polarity, because everything that was said becomes part of the mix master of an anti-social media, which inevitably forces people to take a position which only increases the polarization. And what I find is spiritually important is to protect our space, our own space, our space of ourselves and our loved ones, our homes, and to make that our beginning, to make that our world, where we learn to negotiate the daily ins and outs of living, of the ups and downs of relating, the highs and lows. But as long as love is always there as the ground that we're working from, anything's possible. The transformational power of love is extraordinary. And if there's anything our politics needs right now, it is love. People, I look at the American people as being one great family. Well, we have differences of opinion in the family. Every family, there's no one listening who doesn't know somebody in their family who disagrees with the way that they think, live, whatever. But we're still family, so you try to find a way to communicate, and don't make the communication a gift that you give to someone else, a gift that you give yourself by opening up to differences of opinion. When I served in Congress for 16 years, one of the things that I tried to demonstrate on a daily basis, because this is a practice, this isn't theoretical, is to reach out to people who were on the other side of the aisle, or who maybe were on the same side of the aisle but looked at the world totally differently, to be able to find out what is it they see, why do they see the world that way, and to be able to find ways of building bridges through discussions and through personal connections. Because I found that personal connection of heart to heart, you can explore and find people. There are ways in which people connect. But in a way, we have to dispel all of our old notions about the way the world must be in order for it to survive. Because the world's a very complex place, and we've all learned. So you look at the political conflict right now in Washington. I choose not to participate, to care very much about what was going on, but not to inject and say, well, it ought to be this way or that way, because these are energies that kind of have to play themselves out. And then there's a time for those of us who want to help reconstruct and regenerate our human connections. That's when we go to work. And I think we're probably at that point right now. We're at a point where people of goodwill, people of love, compassion, of heart and intellect this is our opportunity to be able to make a contribution to the country, to our communities. And it starts with examining wherever we may have our own polarized thinking, wherever we may have participated in the dichotomies of us versus them, whoever they are, Democrat versus Republican, of young versus old, rich versus poor, black versus white, on and on and on, gay versus straight. You know, the whole world is filled with these kind of polarities that can feed us into dichotomous thinking, which is actually a precursor of war. And so we build peace thought by thought, word by word, deed by deed, because thought, word, and deed are all integral. We can't pretend if we're thinking something that somehow our thoughts don't enter into some kind of mass consciousness. Of course they do. And so we really have an opportunity here to recreate our country and the world anew, which is why I'm so happy to participate in this. I want to say that I just spent the last 2 years also finishing up work on a book that I've been working on for the better part of 40 years. And it's a story of, it's called The Division of Light and Power. It's on pre-sale right now on Amazon. And it's the story of a young mayor, me, who took on every corrupt interest in the city of Cleveland in order to protect the people's right to have their own municipal electric system, which was under attack from a utility monopoly and banks and a political system and the business community. And I went through that journey. I went into the crucible. I went through that journey where everything that I ever thought of about trying to work with people was tested, and came out of it with an understanding that you could transform your experience if you don't carry the weight of your conflicts. If you find a way, and that's really what the book's inevitably about. It's about how do we not carry around this emotional freight and spiritual freight of situations where you think, well, somebody did me wrong. You know, I've had the opportunity to practice letting go, literally letting go of the conflicts. In the words of the poet Shelley in Prometheus Unbound, to forgive wrongs darker than night, to defy power which seems omnipotent. This is freedom. And so what I find is that we're, you know, through my experience and through my writing, and there's been a path where I've come to a higher realization that we're all in this together. We play different parts. We need to come from a place of understanding, not condemnation, but also willingness to take a stand. Because, you know, being on common ground doesn't mean that we have to agree with everyone, doesn't mean that we back off. It means that we have to use a kind of wisdom about judgment, about what we say, being careful with our words. You know, the principle of Lashon Hora, which is a part of the Orthodox Judaism, which says you don't even think of saying something derogatory about another person. And that's a tough practice, but when you do that, you start to radiate a different kind of consciousness. So is finding a common ground possible? Of course it is. And you know, the thing that we have to do is to wish people well. Yeah, I'll give you one example, and then I know you have a question, Brad. As many of you know, I was a very strong opponent of the war in Iraq. I led the effort against the war in Iraq. And of course, President Bush put us into that. And as a result of that, I offered articles of impeachment. I never did it because I was angry at him. I came from a position where I felt, you know, this really, he has to be held to account. And so right after the State of the Union, you know, with the impeachment resolution having been introduced, after the State of the Union, President Bush started to, well, this is, yeah, right after the State of the Union, he walked past me, I was on the aisle, and I whispered something to him, and he stopped in his tracks. And he came back to me and he said, what did you say, Dennis? And I said, Mr. President, I wish you peace. His whole physical appearance changed right then and there. And he said, you know, he said, thank you. He says, I believe you. Thank you so much. We have to be ready to bridge the gaps that exist in our world by wishing each other the best from a human standpoint, not agreeing necessarily, but seeing that we have a common humanity. And from that common humanity, when we stand there, you know, we can reach a common ground. But that ground, as my wife said earlier on a post about this appearance, you know, the way that you get to common ground is go to a higher ground. So that's what we got to, you know, elevate the discussion, elevate the thinking, elevate our awareness and our consciousness and our sense of volition and extending goodwill. So you know, it's, as long as we don't make things personal, there's always room for change.
Yeah, and if we keep thinking the same thoughts, then it's really hard to change. And to see things different, sometimes we have to, as you were saying earlier, let go, you know, really let go of our deeper attachments. And that's why I like what you said about the transformational power of love. Although for lots of folks, you know, maybe like me, who are kind of cerebral, I think of the phrase that goodwill is love in action. And, you know, on Christmas Day, people talk about, you know, peace on earth, goodwill to all. And I think it's feasible that, you know, one day people could embrace that Christmas spirit, you know, every day. Just simple gestures like in that movie way back, Pay It Forward. But we have a minute or two left, Dennis. I want to ask you one question. Suppose that human beings are able in the coming years really to embrace goodwill and make the effort to find common ground. What do you see that things will look like a few years down the road in this country? Just a minute or two, please.
I think many people are already there. You know, what you send out there is what comes back to you. We want a better world. We have to send out that kind of thinking. It's our consciousness that creates the external world. We have to align ourselves with those principles and live those principles. You know, when I ran for president twice, I discovered something, that there is an underlying unity. We have to evoke that. You call it forward and then build on it, and then you set it back in motion, which is what Mohonk's all about. I know that, and I appreciate it. But, you know, it's not that we're, you know, we're not doomed as a society or a culture, but it starts with us. It doesn't start outside. It starts with our own thinking, our own words, our own deeds. And there has to be a unity to it. We can't, you know, part of the problem with politics is people's deeds don't always mirror what they say. Right. And we need to find that symmetry where people have a sense of integrity, you know, whether we agree with them or not. And that's, I'm very optimistic about the fact that the world can be a better place, but only begins with us. We can't ask somebody else, will you take care? No, we do it. And those of us who are part of this consultation and those of you who are listening, it's really up to each of us. But people need to know how. And it just starts simply with our thinking. And you know, if you have negative thoughts, replace them with something positive. Don't harbor negative thinking. If you don't say anything bad about anyone, don't do anything to hurt somebody. And when you start to practice that, your world starts to change. It's a lighter world, believe me, brighter too.
And that lets the heart open. You know, I used to know a guy who said, negative emotions are useless and unnecessary. Of course, we can have them, but we don't have to stay attached to them. All right. I think I have to keep the show moving along, Dennis. Thanks so much for sharing your thoughts. I wish we had another half hour to do that. And we'll switch gears. So long, Dennis. And next up is Lester Strong, speaking from Florida today. Lester Strong was an award-winning TV journalist and executive for 25 years in New York City, Boston, Atlanta, and Charlotte. After leaving TV, Lester became the president and CEO of the Siddha Yoga Foundation, which coordinated the activities of yoga and meditation centers in 46 countries. Now, Lester is the executive director of the Peaceful Guardians Project in Kingston, New York, which serves as a communication and conflict resolution bridge between law enforcement and communities of color. And I think we all know how important that is these days. Lester also facilitates a 4-week anti-racism workshop series in New York's Hudson Valley entitled How to Help Heal Racism in America. So I think you'll find his talk to be both practical and deep. So Lester, go ahead.
Brad, thank you very much. And it's so great to be with all of you tonight. I think there's going to be tremendous synergy and alignment with the comments that the Congressman made just a little while ago, because I think we're, you know, there's a kind of interesting path that that all of the wise ones through generations and millennia have followed. And I think we're at a time when we're looking to follow that path as well. I want to start by sharing with you a strong precept of mine, and it's not original with me. It's called intention. It's living your life with intention. And what is intention? What does that mean? It means that while I am, you know, acknowledge that the world revolves and unfolds in a certain kind of way, rather than trying to change how I want the world to be, I choose to live the way I want to be in the world. In other words, rather than trying to respond to every external stimuli that's coming down the pike, I want to be clear and focused about how I want to engage myself and those around me and the world. So that's intention. And I share that with you because what I'm about to show you is really, in effect, an intention. It is about how I want to serve as that kind of bridge of communication between people who don't necessarily agree. And to understand that that level of disagreement really is going to exist as long as human beings exist. So if we're trying to create a world where there is no conflict, some great beings who are far wiser and far more compassionate than I have not managed to do that. Whether it's Jesus or Buddha or Muhammad or Lao Tzu or Confucius. So conflict is the nature of humanity. The question is, how do we begin to move beyond that conflict to connection? And that's what I want to share with you now, is really my own personal intention, but it is the intention that I also use in my work. So these are the kind of principles that I use in helping to build a communication bridge between whether they're middle school students, whether they're police officers, whether they're communities of color. This is the framework that I use. This is the norm that we use when we are engaging with one another. And the foundation of these norms is the term that you see at the bottom. This is a term made very popular by Archbishop Desmond Tutu and Nelson Mandela, who said that my humanity is bound up with yours, for we can only be human together. And again, this is one of the things that the senator was saying, is that we are all connected, whether we know it, understand it, or not, we are all connected. And that my success is tied to your success. My failure is tied to your failure. I cannot be fully human unless I enable you to be fully human. So it is a recognition that to fully realize who and what we are and our potential, it is necessary that we be generous and magnanimous and compassionate with others, so that then that same force of compassion is real in our lives as well. So this is not, again, original with me. This has been around for thousands of years. But it really still is relevant and has a very powerful application, because if people, even people who disagree, if they can agree on these four principles in terms of how they will engage with one another, that even if they don't ultimately agree, they can still have respect and compassion for one another. So that's for me the beauty of these four principles. They're called the four gateways of speech. And the idea is that every time that you speak, you literally walk yourself through these four questions even before the words come out of your mouth. And if what you're about to say runs counter to any one of these four, keep silent or modify what you were about to say. So these four principles are: number one, is what I'm about to say true? Now, what does that mean? It means that, is what I'm about to say a fact, or is it an opinion? Both are fine, but it's important to claim it. Don't try to make your opinion a fact. So that's principle number one. And if it is a fact, then you should be able to document and support it with evidence if you say that it's a fact. So that's number one. Is what I'm about to say true? Needless to say, lying has no place in this model. Second, is it kind? And that is to focus the situation, focus on the situation and not on the person. It is never, ever, ever about blaming and shaming other people. It is looking at ways that we can make the situation better. And if what you're about to say is only about attacking, keep silent. Third, is it timely and clear? Meaning, when you say something, be sure that the people that you're speaking to can properly digest what's being said, rather than it being a cacophony of competing voices and everybody's just trying to be heard and nothing is heard. And it's always important that you craft what you say in a way that the person hearing it can take it in and, at best as possible, understand what's being offered by you. And then fourth, is it beneficial? How do these words improve the situation? And if it doesn't improve the situation, then again, I shouldn't say it, because then what it means is I'm saying it out of ego, I'm saying it out of anger, I'm saying it out of manipulation. If it has no true beneficial effect for the person that you are speaking to or the group that you are speaking to, then it has no value. And it is best to keep quiet. So in the work that I do, these are the norms. This is the framework that we all stand by. And the tragedy that we're seeing, in my humble opinion, this is an opinion, in my opinion, the real tragedy of what we're seeing both in our nation's capital and in our country right now, is that our norms are being destroyed. Our foundational agreements for how we can engage with one another in a civil and compassionate way is being lost. And until we can come to a place of agreed upon norms again, this level of conflict and resentment and polarization, sadly, I think will be with us for some time to come. And with that, I'll stop. Brad?
Okay, so that was really useful and practical too. So I'm wondering, you're working with youth and law enforcement locally in Kingston, New York. How do you see both sides? I hate to be polarized right there, but how do you see youth and law enforcement responding to this? And 2 minutes, please.
Okay. We've had an extraordinary experience because what we've said to our young people is to simply speak your truth. Say what is true for you. And what we've also done is put them on an equal footing with police officers. And in other words, police officers, we're not bringing the police officers in as authority figures. We're bringing them in as other human beings who also have questions and concerns and confusions. So when we are able to show one another each other's humanity, that both we have questions, but we also have ideas, and that we can respect those ideas, then the level of engagement has been wonderful and genuine. And the young people have been teachers for the police officers, and the police officers have been teachers for the young people. So it's been a wonderful experience.
Yeah, that's great. I had a professor in college once who encouraged us to see difference where others see sameness, and to see sameness where others see difference. You reminded me of that. Okay, thanks so much. That was really good. I'm having the same experience I did when Dennis was talking. I wish both of you guys could have been on longer, but this is the way it is. We're moving along. Thanks, and I'm gonna switch over to Dior momentarily. Okay, so Dior Williams is a 17-year-old student at Rondout Valley High School in upstate New York, where he is an active member of their Human Rights Club. He also shared his reflections on the importance of peace building at our 2019 conference, Creating and Sustaining Peace at the Mohonk Mountain House. Along with other members of the Human Rights Club and their faculty member, Diana Zuckerman, thanks Diana, Dior was a recipient of the 2020 Mohonk Consultations Distinguished Achievement Award for the club's accomplishments, and I'm told on local, national, and global levels. Dior has an internship and a job at the Ulster County Youth Bureau. He also takes part in Ulster County's Brighter Future initiatives, whose mission is to promote restorative justice and to host community empowerment activities and events. We're really glad to have youth participation at this event, as youth are instrumental in helping to create our future. So, okay, Mr. Williams, it's all yours.
Hi, all. Today, I wanted to talk about virtues of finding common ground, but I also wanted to talk about the importance of teaching these virtues to children of all ages, and the importance of teaching these virtues to younger generations, virtues like Mr. Kucinich talked about, love and peace, virtues of truth and intention, like Mr. Strong talked about. And today I'll mostly be talking about the virtue of humility, specifically intellectual humility and definition and theory, and how it could be taught to future generations. So first, the definition of intellectual humility. If you were to search intellectual humility on the web, you'd probably get a surplus of results, surplus of theories, research. The definition I'm using today is the recognition that the thing you believe in might in fact be wrong. So the recognition that the things you believe in might in fact be wrong. And I believe with that definition, it becomes so easy to identify a lack of humility as a leading cause of polarization. Because right now we're living in and experiencing extreme polarization within our nation, because everyone seems to have such strong and steadfast opinions. And the truth is, this statement would probably go in one ear and out the other to the average American. The recognition that the thing you believe in might in fact be wrong. And I would argue that a battle of humility is a battle that affects every individual. So I'd like everyone to take a second to think about a current belief that you feel strongly about, because we usually only argue something that you feel strongly about. So think of a current belief you feel strongly about while I pull up what I'm going to share. Picture yourself where you would be on this spectrum of intellectual humility, on your willingness to be persuaded on that belief. And I don't want you to be thinking of a belief as big as religion, something less, but something still significant. Do you feel so right about that belief that you're leaning towards arrogance? And that is that would be the definition of intellectual humility and what I'm going to be talking about today. So now that I've explained the definition of intellectual humility and you've discovered just one way it could personally relate to you, let's discuss why it matters. And my answer is the virtue of humility matters because it addresses the issue of polarization from the individual. We could recognize this as a national or global problem, but seem to deny it as an individual problem. I recently watched a TED Talk from a journalist named Farah Nasser, and she explained a Canadian statistic from ISPOS, and it showed that 69% of people believe that the average individual lives in a bubble on the internet, that on social media, they'll only interact with beliefs that directly correlate to what they believe as well. Yet only 31% of those same people thought that about themselves. So that goes to prove that the issue is everyone thinks they're right. And farther than that, everyone thinks that the other party is naive. So that's what intellectual humility is, why it matters. Now my next topic question is, why do we have this tendency? And I believe it's because we're so quick to teach that no one is perfect and everyone makes mistakes or is wrong sometimes. But when it comes to all of our present day beliefs, all the beliefs I hold right now, I can't think of anything I'm wrong about. That's because I was taught that sometimes I'll be wrong, but I was also taught that wrong equals bad. So when it comes to my current day beliefs at 17, I built walls and tall towers of defense and facts and information so high so that if someone comes to attack one of my beliefs, I could easily rapid fire defense, no matter the source or the effectiveness of the debate. All of this to realize that at 17, I am part of the problem. Through elementary school, junior high, and all 4 years of my high school education. And of course, outside of school, we are indirectly retaught the same lesson every day as children. Being right is essential and being wrong is detrimental. And if we teach these lessons to kids of all ages every day, who are we to be surprised that we live in extreme and depressing polarization? So, how can we practice humility? How can we move ourselves to where we want to be on the spectrum showed a moment ago? And more importantly, how can we teach the importance of humility? So I formulated a short list of teachable tips, and they're simple. And the simplicity goes to prove how easily teachable they are. Some are from my personal experiences, and some are from research. But they are all effective, and they are all very teachable. The following tips are not only for use in formal situations, but these tips can be used in any situation where navigating conflict is necessary, at home, at work, in social groups, etc. First of my teachable tips are know what you don't know. In fact, you'll never know what you don't know. There will always be gaps in your knowledge, places where you're absolutely clueless as to your ignorance. Many people think ignorance is something that only affects youth. Many people think an experience is something that only affects youth, but even experts are often clueless as to what they don't know. And next correlates to what Mr. Strong was saying earlier. Intention. Ask with intention. First, asking more than you tell might even be more helpful. Ask with the intention of understanding. This can be done by asking more open-ended why questions. The next in my tip is never underestimate your competition. And I feel as though I should mention that I don't mean competition as an enemy, but rather as opposing opinion. Never assume that you're so right that no matter what the other person says, you'll win the argument. Because if both parties are coming into a debate to win the argument, then there will be no winning at the end. An opposing opinion or opposing belief might come with great weight or persuasiveness. Next is listen. Listen with curiosity. Only when you're not convinced that your idea is or will be better than someone else's, really do you open your ears to what they are saying. Listen without sculpting a response. Listen without the goal of resolution. Listen to identify aspects of common ground. And last of my teachable tips is my favorite. Review your actions. This is one of my favorite tips because most of us tend to do the opposite, especially people of my age and especially myself. Instead of analyzing my response to a situation, I tend to prepare myself for a conflict or even have a fake argument with myself on how I predict a conversation will go. Now, many of these are tips you've probably heard before, or many of these are tips you probably researched for yourself, and you might already be aware of how effective they are. And you might already know how if you were somehow able to use all of these tips at the same time, it would be nearly impossible to have an ineffective debate, or nearly impossible to instigate a disrespectful conversation. As adults who value the idea of finding common ground, I completely understand how you might have already been aware of said tips. Yet we've all had heated, disrespectful, ineffective conversations with someone who disagrees with us. Whether it be friends, family, classmates, or colleagues, we've all probably had more than one. And after the fact, we've recognized humility as a problem and maybe researched better ways to navigate conflict. Now imagine creating an environment where we didn't rely on the average individual to seek this information for him or herself. If we made it a mission or commitment to teach these values to children through curriculum, parenthood, or mentoring. If we taught these virtues to children at early ages, we could assume that maybe one day the polarized reputation of America could change.
That was really good, Dior. That was really good. And you just showed us how youth are ready now to play the role, not later when they're grown up, because that was just really good and very, really practical. So I'm appreciative. Thanks.
And youth are going to be affected by it, whether they're ready or not. So we should teach it.
Yeah, and we'll older folks like me will be affected by what youth does. And I learned a lot raising 4 kids myself from them. Okay, great, thank you. So, just a second. Okay, so next up, we'll have some music, and I'll tell you about it in a second. Okay, Pete Zigger, who lived here in the Hudson Valley, he was a legendary and widely beloved folk singer and activist who lived locally, and he's well known for songs like Turn, 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 and If I Had a Hammer. And speaking of common ground, Pete popularized the Woody Guthrie song, This Land Is Your Land, This Land Is My Land. The music video we are about to see is called God's Counting on Me, God's Counting on You.
There will be a human race here in a few hundred years if you and I work together in some way. and find a way to teach others to work together. When we look and we see things are not what they should be, God's counting on me, God's counting on you. When we look and we see things are not what they should be, God's counting on me, God's counting on you. Hoping we'll all pull through, hoping we'll all pull through, hoping we'll all pull through, me and you. Time to turn things around, trickle up, not trickle down, God's counting on me, God's counting on you. Time to turn things around, trickle up, not trickle down, God's counting on me, God's counting on you. Hey, sing it with us. Hoping we'll all pull through, hoping we'll all pull through, hoping we'll all pull through, me and you. Oh, some of you are singing real good, but some are preserving their academic objectivity. Yes, when drill, baby drill, turns to spill, baby spill, God's counting on me, God's counting on you. Yes, when drill, baby drill, turns to spill, baby spill, God's counting on me, God's counting on you. Hoping we'll all pull through, hoping we'll all pull through, hoping we'll all pull through, me and you. When there's big problems to be solved, let's get everyone involved, God's counting on me, God's counting on you. When there's big problems to be solved, let's get everyone involved, God's counting on me, God's counting on you. Here we go. Hoping we'll all pull through, hoping we'll all pull through, hoping we'll all pull through, me and you. Don't give up, don't give in, working together we all can win, God's counting on me, God's counting on you. Don't give up, don't give in, working together we all can win, God's counting on me, God's counting on you. Hoping we'll all pull through, hoping we'll all pull through, hoping we'll all pull through, me and you. What we do now, you and me, will affect eternity, God's counting on me, God's counting on you. What we do now, you and me, will affect eternity, God's counting on me, God's counting on you. Hoping we'll all pull through, hoping we'll all pull through, hoping we'll all pull through, me and you. I sing with the kids in my hometown. When we work with younger folks, we can never give up hope, God's counting on me, God's counting on you. Yes, when we work with younger folks, we can never give up hope, God's counting on me, God's counting on you. Hoping we'll all pull through, hoping we'll all pull through, hoping we'll all pull through, me and you. Sing it again. Hoping we'll all pull through, hoping we'll all pull through, hoping we'll all pull through, me and you.
I really love that song. I hope you enjoyed it. And just a little plug for Clearwater. Clearwater is not just a sloop, but it's an organization that Pete started, I think in the early 70s, to help clean up the Hudson River. And while it's still pretty dirty, it's a heck of a lot cleaner than it was before the Clearwater. All right, so that's about it. I want to thank you all for being part of Mohonk Consultation's Finding Common Ground webinar. Please stay tuned to our website and our presence on social media like Facebook for updates on our programming. And you can also find out about our really rich history and all the things that we've done and all the different initiatives that arose from conferencing at the Mountain House. We're so grateful for any support you can provide through a donation to Mohonk Consultations. And if you'd like to volunteer or get involved in our work, please get in touch. You can do that checking out the email and the phone number on our website. And as our colleague Dot Maber likes to say, peace is living in harmonious relationship with self, others, and all life. Sounds doable, right? Each of us in our own way does have the opportunity to find common ground with others. May we all share enough goodwill to do so. If you truly want to see change in the world, then make use of opportunities that arise before you, no matter how small, to help make things happen. It's up to all of us. We're all part of the same human family. That's common ground. Okay, folks, stay safe, stay well, and we'll see you next time. So long.